So I got the SNS 55 millimeter aluminum intake put on, and I want to do a comparison after about 600 miles now that I've had it on the bike compared to stock. So in previous videos, I talked about what kind of camshaft I'm running. I'm running a 240, 250 comp cam, and it's 106.5 degrees of camshaft lobe separation. So in previous video, I talked about camshaft lobe separation. And in another video, I talked about camshaft lift and duration and the different types of riding characteristics or handling characteristics that'll come along with that. The big controversy with this plastic intake is that it's plastic. And my question is like, where's all the bodies? Where's all the busted intakes that have melted? And, you know, these guys are smashing with a sledgehammer and Harley's so stupid. And well, I mean, if you modify your bike, then yeah, this thing is a piece of shit if you're, you know, running more cubic inches or some wild radical cam, you know, that's got a low vacuum signal because you got a ton of duration, then yeah, the smooth inside, you know, is going to, especially at lower RPMs, you don't have a lot of vacuum signal, you're going to get a tendency to pool in there with the smooth interior. For me, and this is just my results, and I'm not going to carry around a freaking dyno sheet with me everywhere I go and be like, see, I got 3 more horsepower than you, or I got 5 more horsepower than you. Like, it really depends on your riding style. Like, what are you trying to do? A lot of people don't like that RPM range of, you know, 3,500 and up. Because if you're in a turn or a corner, you got to get some RPMs up in there to get the power to take, without stuttering, it'll kind of stutter on you because it's not getting a good vacuum signal until you rev up higher. A lot of people don't like that in corners or at a stoplight, you know, especially if you're a newer rider or if you just like the smooth transition, you know, between taking off and in the gears. Because, you know, when you have that low vacuum signal and a high duration cam, you kind of got to rev it up. And, you know, if you're not used to that jerky kind of, you know, in the middle of a turn, revving up and letting your clutch out and really biting into the turn, you know, you might like that lower end. Like, let me just make a real smooth transition, you know, 2,000 RPMs and just kind of glide through the curve. So, you know, the stock cam would be great for that. So as far as the performance of this stock intake, I had it on the bike for 9,000 miles after I had this huge cam in there. It was fine. You know, the biggest difference that I noticed was the tone. You know, I started getting a lot more treble in the tone of the bike. It was cracking, a lot more cracking. It's like when you're setting a welder and you have too much wire speed and it's like your voltage can't keep up with as much wires you're putting in there and you'll hear it kind of bog out, you know, and then when you back off the wire speed or you bring your voltage up, depending on what you're welding, you'll hear it kind of sizzle like bacon and it starts to pop and crack a little bit better. So I noticed that immediately. I also noticed that in my RPM range, you know, 90 miles an hour in 5th gear is only about 3,000 RPMs, 3,200 RPMs. And the cam's good for 6,500. So, I mean, I've got a whole nother gear. I mean, 6th gear is like 90 miles an hour. 6th gear is just like you're barely starting the power band. You know, it's kind of boggy. It's kind of doggy. You know, but down in the lower gears, man, you can rip all the way through those lower gears. So I'm at the end of the video, I'm going to put up the camshaft specs. I got 2 pages of camshaft specs. It shows you the stock M8, the CVO M8. Between the stock and the CVO M8, there's not too much difference. I think it's a 114 camshaft lobe separation angle. You'll see LSA on the camshaft spec sheet. That'll tell you what the camshaft lobe separation angle is. And I think it's 114 on a stock M8 and it's 113 on a CVO. So just a little bit of difference. I talked, like I say, in a previous video about the big differences between camshaft lobe separation angles. But you can check those out, and then it lists all the cams, SNS, Woods, you know, all kinds of different cams, and you can see how radical they get within there. And mine's like, you know, one of the, before you get full race, like it's about as radical as you can get. That's my style. That's what I like. I like getting into those RPM ranges and letting the power out at a mid-range of RPMs, like 3,500. You know, I'm used to it. I've been a chopper guy for a long time, but, you know, having this road glide's been fun to experiment with and try these different components out and see what they do. Obviously, I'm atomizing the fuel better because I have a low vacuum signal. I have a lot of valve overlap, and that rough surface inside of the intake will help to break up that fuel. And that's what's probably giving me that higher treble sound. Now, if you have a stock camshaft, 114 degrees lobe separation, you're not getting very much valve overlap. And you have a ton of vacuum signal because your duration isn't that high. So I talked about the Venturi effect in a previous video. When you come into the opening here and you've got your butterfly opening up, you're getting, depending on how far you open up the butterfly, this large opening is going to have more pressure and less velocity. And then as you come to the other side of the intake, where it heads into the port of the head, then you're going to have high velocity and low pressure. And that's what helps break up the fuel to help it to atomize. So that's why it's not a huge deal on a stock engine to have the smooth inside here, because the velocity of the air coming through there, changing between high pressure and low pressure as it gets into the port of the head, that's what's going to help to atomize the fuel. It's like if you were spraying an air nozzle and you sprayed water into it, it's going to blow that air and help it to atomize. So that's Harley's not stupid. You know, you see guys talking about how stupid they are. It's like, you know, it's a great intake for the stock Harley Davidson. Like I say, show me the bodies. Where is it going to melt? Where is it going to crack? But and even with a pretty wild cam, I didn't have any serious problems with it. But the S&S did make quite a big difference for me. I could definitely feel the power all the way through the power band range. The fuel economy didn't change too much. I'm still sucking fuel pretty good. The handling characteristics are pretty much the same, but I definitely have more power. I have a more crisp note, a more crisp tone. I'm going to put the camshaft spec sheets up on here. I'll run them for a couple minutes or a couple seconds or whatever. You take a screenshot, zoom in on them, find your cam, and then start thinking about the things that you want to accomplish with your riding style. Because like I say, what are you going to do? Carry around a dyno sheet with you? I mean, if that's your point, is just to make as much horsepower as possible, then cool, chase those numbers, more power to you. I mean, that's great. But if you're looking to just ride and think about how you ride, how you like to negotiate a turn, if you're on the freeway a lot, if you're on big long trips, you just want some power to cut through the wind. If you want power to climb inclines on mountains and stuff, think about how you want that power to come on and how you want the motorcycle to sound and to feel the frequency of it when you're riding it. So you can look through a lot of my previous videos where I talk about the Venturi effect, camshaft lobe separation angle, camshaft lift, camshaft duration, vacuum signal, all these different things that affect your AFRs. So if you're stock, I mean, if you're going to put pipes on, you're going to have to tune it anyway, put a tuner on it. So it might be a good idea to do it at that time. But I mean, an air cleaner, I've got the RLMS big sucker air cleaner on there, the air cleaner filter, and that made a huge difference. So maybe just an air cleaner, but if you want to do the intake, you got the extra $200, you'll probably get a little more pep out of it, but you're going to need a tuner on there, because if you get more air in there or you change the atomization of the fuel, your computer's going to have to adjust to that. And if it's stock, if it's the stock ECU, it's not going to adjust to that. So if you're going to put a tune on it anyway because of your pipes, maybe it's time to do the intake. You could probably get away with just the intake filter or filter housing. It'll probably help you get a little more pep in there. But if you're looking for horsepower numbers, or if you're drag racing, or you're looking for better times on the track, then obviously you're going to want to dig into more of the minutiae of all the components and how much exact horsepower you're getting. But it all comes down to your riding style. There's a guy that can have a whole bunch more horsepower than you, and you can kick his ass in a quarter mile or outride him. So it's a lot of it's up to the operator, and that's the fun part about these engines is that a lot of people go for the aesthetics, the handlebars and chopping and angles and all the different looks that you can get out of it. But the engine is mostly what I've been focusing on with this M8, because I pretty much like the aesthetic of my bike at this point. Like I say, if you got a stock bike, I wouldn't worry too much about this intake exploding or melting or cracking or any of that type of crap. And even if you have a pretty mild cam, I mean, it's not going to be a huge difference that you're going to get out of this. But if you do have a huge cam, a radical cam, or if you've increased your cubic inches, that intake is you will definitely notice a huge difference.